Here we see the first indication of Patanjali's insight into the human condition and his kindness. He's told us we have to control all our thoughts. And probably at that moment, most of the people stood up and were heading out the room. I always picture him teaching in this gated outdoor courtyard for some reason. And he says, Yoga chitta vritti narodaha, restrain your mind from forming into thoughts. And everyone goes, yeah. And they stand up, turn their back, and begin exiting. If you're a teacher, any of you teachers? Are you teachers? Well, you know, the first rule for a teacher is to keep them in the room, because if they leave the room, there's no teaching that's going to happen. So, seeing this situation, he goes, wait a second, it's not that hard. I know it seems hard, but guess what? There are only 2 categories of thoughts. Guess what? There are only 5 basic types. You can handle that, can't you? So let me ask you, how does that change the way it feels? First you're told you're having to control all the thoughts, and then you're told only 2 categories, only 5 types. I can do that. It's brilliant. Another thing, here's where you see Patanjali's inclusiveness. An insight into how the dynamics when we move through life. Usually when we experience something or we think something about what's happening, there are 2 dimensions. One is, how does it make me feel? And the other is, what does it mean? How can I understand the content? And he realizes that some of us are more emotional oriented, some of us are more intellectual, analytical oriented. So he's told us we have to control the thoughts. What he's doing now, he's giving us 2 templates to begin to use the buddhi to observe the thoughts and understand them. Because if you want to release something, the way to do it, by understanding, you gain the capacity to let it go. You see it for what it is, you see it as other than you, and then it drops away. So he gives us 2 templates. The first is, you can look at whatever thoughts occur and determine, is it painful or painless? Swami Karunananda in his commentary gives 2 other words to help understand this. Is it selfish or selfless? And the idea is to begin to release, or at least not entertain or indulge, painful, selfish thoughts. Can't get rid of all thoughts at once, but stick with the painless, selfless ones if you want to retain your peace, if you want your mind to be peaceful, that lake to be calm. It's simple. And if you don't believe it, do an experiment. Raja Yoga is about experimentation. Spend a few days being as selfish as possible. As selfish as you can be. And see how you feel. See how others feel about you. And then spend a few days being as selfless as possible. And see how that feels. Prove it to yourself. Prove it to yourself. Okay? So that's selfish, selfless. Then he gives us 5 types. Right knowledge, misconception, verbal delusion, sleep, and memory. So out of all the thoughts we have, there are only 5 types. Okay? Right knowledge and misconception are the only ones that deal with sense perception. Simply put, in right knowledge, the vritti that occurs in your mind correctly corresponds to whatever is happening out there. In misconception, something's happening, but there's a different vritti in your mind. If there's something wiggling on the road and you think it's a snake, and it is a snake, it's right knowledge. If you see something and it looks to you like it's wiggling, but it's really the play of light that's making it look that way, and it's really a rope, then it's misconception. That's the 2 categories, basic thought forms for sense perception. And the interesting thing to know as yogis is some commentators conclude that the most frequent thought form in the mind is misconception. We don't perceive or interpret things accurately. Think of the society in which we live. Misconception all over the place. Misconception. Yeah. So, why don't we perceive things as they are? Best explanation I've ever heard is from Swami Vivekananda, a great Raja Yogi. He compares process of perception to an oyster making a pearl. The way an oyster makes a pearl is a little parasite or a little bit of grit falls into the shell. And immediately the oyster throws its own enameling around it to protect itself from the irritation. We call that a pearl. Okay? Similarly, all the objects we perceive, all the situations, everything we take in through the senses are like little bits of grit falling into our minds. Immediately, our mind reacts and gloms onto that our interpretation based on our prior conditioning. How are we conditioned? We're conditioned by our family, friends, upbringing, education, culture, religion, society, advertising, social media, etc., etc. And the yogis would say not only from this life, from prior lives as well. And all that gets glommed onto whatever we're perceiving. So we don't see that raw bit of data coming in. We're seeing our interpretation of it. And then the mind builds a story around it. And that's what our known universe consists of. Not things in themselves, but our interpretation and stories about them. It's like we're all walking through life with a certain type of glasses. Someone's might be red rosy, another green concave, yellow convex, purple prismatic. We look out at the same event and see it differently. So what is it that yoga does for us? By analyzing the thoughts and beginning to understand the condition of our mind, we come to know how we're glomming our own interpretations onto things. In essence, we begin to see the types of glasses we are wearing. That's what giving these templates is about. Beginning to understand the particular set of glasses we're wearing. Then he's going to give us practices to take care of the thought forms. The practices are the way to take the glasses off. So first we learn what we're wearing, and then we learn how to take them off so we can see things in truth as they are, clearly. Does that make sense? Okay. And this may be the last one we get to, but it's worth getting to today. I think the next one is the thought form for the modern age. This one is called verbal delusion. It's also sometimes translated as imagination or conceptualization. This is when words don't correspond to reality. When there's no tangible external event or object that corresponds. Think of the world in which we live in. Think of industries. Think of social media. Think of politics. You name it. Verbal delusion abounds. Wherever there are opposing agendas, where people are passionate about things, have strong opinions, opinions begin to masquerade as facts. And then literally what we see is a web of disinformation is spun. That's what we see. So this is a way, knowing that this is happening, seeing how it happens within us, we can understand better how it happens on the world stage and move through life with greater clarity and balance. I remember once seeing a commercial on TV. There was someone standing on scaffolding, painting a billboard, and it was for some pharmaceutical. And they were talking about how if you take this drug, you will have the strength and your joints won't hurt and you'll be able to paint billboards. Okay? This was the mess. I still remember, this was years ago. And then, you have the low tone under voice, whatever that's called, that starts talking really quick. Possible side effects include nausea, diarrhea, sore throat, vomiting, cancer, death. But you will be able to paint billboards. It's insanity. It's absolute insanity. And we're surrounded by it, and we perpetuate it ourselves. Gossip, rumors, flattery. When people date, oh, I've never met anyone like you before in my life. I will be with you forever. No one believes. Neither the person speaking or the person hearing it, no one believes it. The words have no reality, yet that's the game we play. Our fears, very often, we talk about them inside of our minds. I know I've done this. There's no external reality. And then at some future time, maybe something will happen. It rarely takes the form of the story you've created for yourself. Do you know what I'm saying? But it's not only bad. This thought form, its negative side, very destructive, potentially destructive in a society, sowing confusion and enmity among people. But it also has its positive side, which is, this is what Raja Yoga offers as a way to understand the secret and mystery of creation. Wherever you see creation, it could be in science, in medicine, in art, in inventions, in our own lives, making a business plan, making a spiritual practice plan. Wherever you see the creative process unfolding, this thought form is in play. There's no corresponding reality at the moment, but you're using the principle, also from Raja Yoga, as you think, so you become. By formulating and affirming it, you're setting forth powerful forces to make it manifest. It's the power of creation. Words that don't correspond to the present reality, but being affirmed to create our future reality. In the Bible, they say God, in Genesis, God spoke the creation into existence. God said, let there be light. And there was light, and everything else came after that. Together, collectively, we are thinking our shared future into existence by the thoughts we consciously cultivate. The mind is like, a factory. All sorts of stuff comes into it. All sorts of guests arrive at our mental parlor, you can say. We all have, the good, the bad, the ugly, whatever. The difference is, and then I here go back to choice, which ones we choose to entertain, which thoughts we invite in, serve tea, chat, invite to come back tomorrow, and which we ignore and say, sorry, I'm not interested in what you have to share. Please don't come here again. That's what makes all the difference. All the difference. Can't always help. The atmosphere is filled with gazillions of thoughts. Can't always help what comes in. We can control it a bit by picking proper supportive environments. But even then, you can't totally control it. But where we do have control is what we choose to entertain. And by what we entertain, we can choose to create something beautiful or destroy. We can sow seeds of harmony or discord. We can bring forth greater tools to support everyone's health, or we can release plagues on society. The extremes are huge in our culture today. Thanks to the brilliance of the focused minds of scientists and innovators and those who came before them, we've literally tapped into and released the powers of nature. These beings have meditated on the atom, on even smaller particles, on disease, bacteria, and pathogens. They've meditated and determined how to rid us of them, how to protect us from them. And at the same time, there are others who are applying the same tool of that focused mind, trying to create things that could destroy. It's all a matter of choice. And this particular sutra encapsulates the creative potential of the human mind. It's something we can personally use in affirmations. You're sitting here going, and you go, I'm an embodiment of perfect health and vitality. I'm an embodiment of perfect health and vitality. The power of intention to create a better future is the use of this thought form. When we deal with children, when we deal with people who are not doing well, but we say, "You're doing great," to encourage and inspire them. It's all this thought form. So understanding it in our own lives, then seeing how it functions on the world stage, with that knowledge and understanding, we can become more effective and productive and more of a healing influence in the lives of those around us and by the waves that go out for those everywhere who are open to receive that energy. Okay? So, something to think about when all that stuff is going around. What's really going around there? What do I want to entertain? What do I want to ignore? And let me have due respect for the power, the potential in the thoughts that I cultivate. Okay? And eventually we bypass all of them, make the mind calm and clean, and experience the glorious self, free from all these botherations. Thank you for your kind attention.